Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Welcome into another episode of the podcast, listeners. Excited to be here with you again this week, talking about something that came up actually in one of our group calls several months ago. Actually, kind of wrote like a little every once in a while something. Actually, I shouldn't say every once in a while. Very often, almost all of the content that you get from me on the podcast or in my emails or whatever comes from interactions that I have with clients. So this is not a every once in a while kind of thing, but several months ago we were having a group call, the group that I run, Coaching Moms, which by the way, you're welcome to join at any time. It is a lifetime program, so you're never like too late to join, and you're never too um too rushed or too busy or too harried to be a part of it, because it happens to all of us every once in a while. We can't make it. Come the next week. See you next month. I've got moms in there that have been with me from the very beginning, so I've been coaching them for years now. It is a fabulous program. But anyhow, several months ago, we had this conversation in the group where I was like, this is a really important concept. And I'm always just writing little notes and circling things that in my notes that are like, okay, this is going to be a topic. So I was kind of had it on my to-do list to talk about this with y'all. And the topic is, well, the title of today's podcast, Are Your Eyes on the Wrong Prize? The topic we're talking about today is, how do we stay the course with our kids and not get distracted by our own stuff? And I could say this in so many different ways. How do we not get distracted by our own stuff? How do we make sure that like the goals that we have in parenting are actually aligned with good parenting? How do we make sure that we're not trying to achieve things with our kids that are A, impossible, or B, not our right or in our scope actually to achieve? These are the things we're going to talk about. And I know that you're going to understand what I'm saying so much better when I give you this example. So I know it's confessions of a parent coach. So usually I'm the one with the confession today, but instead of a confession from my own life, I'm just going to confess to you or tell to you the conversation that we were having in group, because I do think that it is this perfect illustration of what the weeds that we get into as parents. So one of the parents in the group, a mom who has a early teenager, young teenager, was talking about, really trying to protect her daughter from any sort of like trauma or negative experiences with in the sexual realm. So her daughter is heterosexual, so with guys, trying to protect her daughter from, traumatic or yucky or unpleasant or not okay experiences with guys. And you know, we were having this whole conversation. Like the conversation started because she asked, how do I talk to her about this stuff so that she doesn't get herself into these situations? And we talked about like communication skills and how do we keep the bridge of communication open. We talked about body positivity, sexual positivity, being super open, being a safe space for our kids so that they come to us and talk to us about things like sex, all of those things which you've heard me talk about on the podcast many times, and I will continue to talk about many times in the future. But really, where the conversation kept coming back to was she was just like, but, how is that going to actually keep her safe? How am I going to make sure that this didn't happen to her? And finally, this courageous, amazing, dedicated mom chose to just kind of share a little bit of the backstory of why this was so important to her. And she shared about her own sexual trauma in the group. And really told about like her story of losing her virginity. And it wasn't a great story for her. She felt like she was going along with something because she wanted to be liked by this boy. She regretted it later when she finally, realized that she had gotten in over her head. She tried to talk about it with her mom, and her mom was just kind of like panicked and freaking out, really not listening to her or focused on her, but much more on like, do we need to schedule an appointment with a doctor? And we need to get this for you and we need to do that for you. And, this poor girl is sitting there saying, like, can I just tell you how I feel? Like, I just need to talk to you. Can you like look at me as a human being instead of, a to-do list of like emergency actions that you need to take, right? So, between the way that things went down between her and this boy and the way that things went down between her and her mom, it was awful. And, she further explained that she felt like it had really set her up for, a lifetime of bad dynamics in the romance department and stuff like that. And so, as a mom now, she has both societal messages telling her that our job as parents is to make sure that our kids, you know, don't have sex too early and don't have negative sexual experiences, maybe hold off having sex, all of those things. She's got that coming at us because we all have that coming at us from society. But she also has it coming at her from her own past and her own experiences. And so her focus in this parenting moment is, how do I protect this horrible thing that happened to me? How do I make sure that doesn't happen to my kid? Which makes perfect sense that she's feeling that way, right? And so all of our conversations kept coming back to the same question, but how do I protect her? How do I keep this from happening to her? And at one point in the conversation, I said, basically, you don't. We can't protect our kids from the things that happened to us from happening to them, or things that didn't happen to us, but we're just really afraid of them happening to our kids. We can't protect our kids from those possible outcomes. And that's where the idea of our eyes are on the wrong prize comes in. Like, as parents, our eyes are so often on the prize of really managing and controlling what happens in our kids' lives. Whether we're talking about controlling their behavior and their choices, we're trying to, get this kid to change, get this kid to understand this life lesson, get this kid to blah, 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 get this kid not to make these poor decisions or make these mistakes, or make sure that these things that are bad don't happen to our kids. Like, how do I control my kids' unfolding of my child's life? How do I manage that? And then what I'm trying to tell you guys today, and you've heard me say it in a million different ways, and you'll never stop hearing me say it, that's the wrong prize. That's not actually the goal of parenting. That's not the point of parenting. And the worst part is that when our eyes are on the wrong prize, our eyes are not on the right prize. And we miss the actual beauty, the actual thing that our sort of mandate is as parents. We miss the actual opportunity we have with our kids. So I talked to this mom about, and I actually love that I'm teaching this concept around something that's so high stakes, so scary, so, intense as sexual trauma. We're not talking about, it'd be easy to have this conversation about things like doing your homework or not doing your homework, or whether or not you share your toys with your friend, or, all of the lower stakes things that we still as parents struggle with, but they're not the like gut wrenching, soul crushing, terror striking topics. But this is just the way that this topic unfolded for us in the group, was around sexual experiences and this mom's personal experiences and her fear and drive to protect her kid. And I kind of love that it worked out that way, because if we can apply these concepts to these really scary, intense things, man, that sharing shit becomes like a piece of cake, doesn't it? So let's talk about, like, okay, if controlling and protecting our kids, if like making sure our kid learns this life lesson or doesn't make this mistake or doesn't have this horrible experience If that's the wrong prize, what is the right prize? And how I talked to this mom about her experience was to ask her, and I ask you this same question: what would have made that really hard experience less traumatic for you? Not saying what would have made you not, go with that boy, or what would have made you not, give in to this feeling of pressure to please him or whatever. But let's just say all of that stuff still happened. What could your mom have done to make that experience less traumatic and maybe not even this like life defining experience that it was for you? And it took her a while to actually think about that. But after a while and after a little bit of dialogue, she basically walked away by saying, what I wish my mom could have done, and it would have made a huge difference for me, is, I mean, A, listen, just listen to me. Two, stay calm and not freak out. Three, and these are my words, not hers, because I'm putting my coach speak to this, but like validate her emotions, right? Like tell her that her feelings made sense, that she was safe, that it was okay for her to feel this way, that, you know, that it's gonna be okay. Your feelings make sense. I see you, I hear you. Feeling seen and heard is a huge piece of the puzzle here. And the last thing is, maybe help me decide what I wanted to do in that situation. And after we had that conversation, I was just like, hell yes, bingo. Listen to what you're saying. You're not saying what my mom should have done is protect me from this ever happening with this boy. What I'm saying is what my mom should have done is help me go through that experience not alone. And that to me is the right prize. When we have our eyes on the right prize, we understand that like scary and really regrettable things are going to happen to our children, because our children are human beings and nobody gets out of this life scot free, right? It's not for lack of protection. It's not for lack of good parenting. It is the way that the human experience works, is that our kids are going to go through things that leave indelible marks on them, that are things that we wish that hadn't happened to them, that we think are unfair, that shouldn't happen to children. All of those things are going to happen to our kids. What takes those experiences from capital T trauma or even lowercase t trauma isn't not having those experiences. It's having someone go through and walk alongside them. Because when you have a trusted adult with you, when you go through these really awful moments, it makes that moment, it brings it down to your child's level. It makes it not above that kid's pay grade. When things are above your pay grade, when things are too confusing, too intense, too emotional, too scary, that is what creates trauma. When you have a trusted adult with you who's able to actually show up in these healthy ways with you, it doesn't mean that that experience now is positive in the sense that it was enjoyable or pleasurable, or you can look at it and just say, I'm so glad that happened to me. Maybe not. Probably not. But it makes it two things. It makes it something that you can actually go through and process and deal with. And it also makes it, once again, not a positive experience in the sense that it was pleasurable or enjoyable or lovely or anything like that. But it takes even the most awful moment and turns it into an opportunity for closeness and almost like strengthening of the relationship between the parent and the child. This is the prize that I want all of our eyes to be on it. And also, can you feel, even as I'm saying this, I hope you can feel like a sense of release and relief and relaxation around it. Like, oh, making sure nothing bad happens to my child. Like, how hard is that? I mean, it's impossible. Showing up with integrity when hard things happen to my child. Oh, that is something that's an actual attainable goal. I can do that. And even that is still challenging, right? Like, in order for us to show up in this way of integrity with our kids, like, what does this mom need to do in order to be able to show up in conversations about sex in this way with her kid? And what does she need to do to be able to show up with integrity when things bad, or what she deems to be bad, happen to her kid? She's got to do her own work, because otherwise it's going to be like this triggering moment that puts her right back into her own unfinished business. So it's an attainable goal. It's not easy all the time. And we need help to do that. And this is why I have a job. This is what I do. It's what I get help to do for myself. And it's what I provide help for my clients to do, is go through this stuff, get that clarity, but get your eyes on the right prize, and then figure out, okay, so now I know what my project is. Doesn't mean my project is easy. It doesn't mean my project will ever be done. But now I know what my roadmap is. And I also have someone that's going to walk along that roadmap with me. Just like your kid deserves someone to walk alongside them while they go through hard stuff, so do you. And it's not because you're still a little girl or something like that. It's because all people deserve that at all ages. And so the same thing that I'm teaching my clients to provide for their kids, I am providing for them so that they can actually learn and grow and integrate and process these unfinished things that they've gone through in their lives and onboard the skills that we're talking about. Like, it's one thing for me to sit in that coaching group and talk to all these moms about, oh, let's have our eyes on the right prize and look at, you know, what do we do when our kids talk to us about sex, and what kind of rules do we want to have in our home about sex, and um, you know, what kind of energy and what are the things that I want to say to my kid when they come to talk to me about sex, or when I find out that they're having sex. We can talk about all of that stuff until our lips fall off in the group, but actually walking that path can be challenging, and having somebody with you who can give you those tangible tools and then also help you do the work to be able to use those tools, it is a game changer. So I hope that's helpful for you today. The next thing I want you to do is think about, where do this really kind of, this principle that we've applied to this kind of super intense and sort of scary conversation, where does that apply in all levels of parenting? Not just, these big high stakes moments, but like, where does it apply to that, for example, sharing analogy that I gave in the beginning or doing your homework, right? Most of us have our eyes on the prize of making our kid different. Let's make sure this kid does his homework. Let's make sure this kid is a good friend and always shows up well on play dates and is a sharing kid. But that's not the right prize. If we apply this principle to all those little, maybe lower stakes or younger age scenarios, what is the right prize there? And the right prize is always going to be, how do I let my kid make their own choices and let life unfold the way that it's, meant to for them, and just be alongside them while that happens so that they can learn from their experiences, make different choices, really, embody the opportunity that's presented by skipping your homework, for example, or by showing up and not sharing with your friend. If our eyes are on the prize of, I'm here with you, we have a strong bond, we have a strong attachment, I'm holding boundaries in a healthy way, I'm reflecting for you in a healthy way, there's emotional safety in our relationship, and you're not alone as you go through hard stuff. If your eyes are on that prize, the mistakes become just part of the journey. The skipping the homework, the being a jerk on a play date, the, acquiescing in a sexual moment when really your, intuition said you didn't really want to. They're all mistakes, and they are opportunities. And all of those things simply become moments along the way when we are there with our kids in healthy ways. And I want to give the caveat here, because statistically, I guarantee that there are people listening to this podcast right now who have gone through capital T trauma that no trusted adult holding your hand while you went through it would have turned it not into a trauma. That is absolutely 100% true. And there are things in our lives that no trusted adult can soften the blow of in the way fully, the thorough way that would actually make that situation solely redemptive and not traumatic. That is absolutely true. And even in those situations, the one thing that could make it less horrible less traumatic, less of the most, this miserable moment is still having that person to come to and talk to and be safe with and have that sounding board to make decisions and figure out what you want to do there. So I want to just from my heart to yours acknowledge that trauma is very real and it's not entirely preventable. And the best possible thing that we can do as parents is keep our eyes on the prize of showing up with integrity with our children, no matter what. I hope that's helpful for you all today. If you're feeling like, oh my gosh, this is landing with me, yes, please set up a free discovery call with me and let's talk about how this applies to your life. And let's talk about your whole scenario with your kiddo, not just on this, narrow topic. Let's make a roadmap to the life of your dreams with your kiddo and let's talk about making it happen. Links to set up that discovery call are always in the show notes. And I cannot wait to talk to you again next week. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/KaplanCall, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.